Hi, beautiful people. Welcome to the Fort Salem Library, where we read you your fanfiction. So sit down or don't, relax or don't, and enjoy these stories in a way you have not before. We at Fort Salem Library do not own Motherland Fort Salem or any of the related characters. The Motherland Fort Salem series is created by Elliot Lawrence and owned by Freeform. This story is a work of fanfiction and is meant for entertainment only. We are not making any profit from these stories. All rights of the original Motherland Fort Salem story belong to Freeform. We also do not own Who Has to Know or any of its original characters and storylines. We did, however, get permission from the author to read their story. This story was created and written by TrueFreak89, and you can find a link in our show notes. This story is being read to you by Britt. Who Has to Know? Chapter 3. Riel stumbled back into the party, her mind racing as she scanned the crowd for the girl who just kissed her. Who the hell did Scylla think she was? Kissing her like that and then walking off like nothing happened? Riel spotted the other girl in the grand dining room and made a beeline straight for her. She came to an abrupt stop as she spotted Porter and Byron nearby. The two boys were setting up a game of beer pong on the antique dining table, lining up a set of red cups on either side. She caught Scylla's eye, and the other girl paled. "Riel?" Byron looked up and spotted the blonde hanging by the doorway. "Hey, we need one more. Come, be on my team." He ushered her over, ignoring Riel's mumbled objections about needing to find Abigail. Across the other side of the table, Scylla looked as uncomfortable as Riel felt. Porter went first, sinking the ping-pong ball into one of the cups with ease despite Byron's trash-talking. He grinned smugly as the other boy drank whatever was in the cup. It was Byron's turn next, and he sent the ball harmlessly sailing over the other team's cup. It bounced off the end of the table, sending Porter chasing after it. Scylla went next. She pointedly kept her gaze fixed on the table, ignoring Riel altogether as she lined up the shot. "Come on, shortstop," Byron teased his twin, trying to put her off. It didn't work. Scylla's ball bounced effortlessly into one of their cups, and Riel finally found out what was in them as she was forced to drink. She winced at the sickly sweet taste as she swallowed, quickly followed by a fiery burn down her throat. "Ugh, is this Fireball?" "Sure is hot stuff," Byron grinned, nodding at an almost empty bottle of Fireball whiskey sitting on the side. Riel pulled a face. She had thought that they were playing with beer. The teen was already buzzed to start with. She lined up her own shot next and sunk the ball into the cup by Scylla's right hand, making the other girl drink. Scylla's first successful throw turned out to be something of a fluke, and Riel only needed to drink one more shot during the rest of the game. Byron landed his last throw, making Porter drink and winning the game for their side. "Ha! Suck it, losers!" He laughed at his sister and best friend, and swept his smaller teammate up in a hug, lifting Riel up off her feet. "It's a win for Team Gay." Riel laughed, some of the earlier awkwardness having worn off thanks to the effect of the hard liquor burning its way through her system. Across the table, Scylla pulled a face and excused herself to the bathroom, pressing a kiss to Porter's cheek before she left. Riel staggered as Byron placed her back down. She held onto the edge of the table to keep her balance, watching Scylla push her way through the crowd in the living room to make her way upstairs. She turned to make her own excuse to leave, but found Porter and Byron distracted with already setting up for the next game. Riel slipped away unnoticed by either of them and went after the other girl. It was quieter downstairs. Abigail had locked most of the rooms up there to deter horny teenagers from taking advantage of the many guest rooms. No one was waiting outside the bathroom at the end of the hall thanks to the more popular downstairs bathroom. Riel was waiting when Scylla opened the door and stepped out. Her eyes narrowed on the blonde, and she tried to brush past her. Riel had other ideas. She pushed the other girl back into the bathroom, slamming the door shut behind them. "What the hell was that?" Riel demanded, her voice a harsh growl. Scylla did a good job of hiding her panic as she schooled her features into a neutral expression and folded her arms across her chest. "You won at Pong," she answered, her tone flippant. Not that. I'm talking about you kissing me. What? Scoffed Scylla. You kissed me, and then you dragged me in here like some kind of freak. You're the freak, swanning around like you're better than everyone? Scylla's eyes darkened, becoming bottomless pits of hatred as her top lip curled up. It's easy to be better than some dumb jog who takes nothing seriously. The bitter remark was like a red rag to a bull. Riel's fist clenched at her sides, and she fought the urge to lash out at the other girl. She'd always been a hothead with a temper. It had gotten her into trouble more than once when she was younger, but it had been years since she'd last got into a physical fight with anyone. Her hands shook with the effort of keeping them at her sides. Scylla noticed. Rather than take a step back or try to de-escalate the situation, the other girl stepped closer, smirking as she got right in Riel's face. Riel could smell the cinnamon whiskey on her breath as she said, You want to hit me, caller? Go ahead. I'll put you on your ass. A bookworm like you? I doubt it, scoffed Riel. Scylla took another step forward. So they were almost nose to nose. Try me. The two girls stared each other down in a silent standoff until something snapped in Riel. She grabbed the other girl by the shoulders, spun her around, and pushed her up against the bathroom door. Riel crushed her mouth against Scylla's in a searing kiss, picking up where they left off by the pool. Scylla grabbed at her, pulling her in closer instead of pushing her away as the kiss deepened. Riel dipped her head, moving her lips to press open-mouth kisses to Scylla's neck. The other girl gasped, arching into her touch as Riel's hand slipped its way to her pants. Riel was on autopilot, her alcohol-soaked mind taking a back seat while her body acted on impulse. It didn't matter that this was Scylla Ramshorn she was kissing, that it was Scylla's underwear she was shoving her hand into. The other girl groaned as Riel slipped 2 fingers inside of her. She was so tight, her walls clenching tightly around Riel. Riel didn't give her any time to adjust as she curled her fingers and began moving them in and out of her at a bruising pace. Her mouth found Scylla's again, and the slightly shorter girl's breathy moans were swallowed up. Scylla's hand sought Riel's wrists, and Riel's fingers faltered for a moment, expecting the other girl to demand that she stop. Instead, Scylla took hold of her wrist, urging her on while the other hand tangled itself in Riel's hair, tugging painfully at her braids. Riel kept going, fingering Scylla against the bathroom door with no regard for who might hear them on the other side. Scylla's body tensed beneath her as Riel brought her thumb to the other girl's clit, sending her flying over the edge. Scylla tore her mouth away from Riel's, burying her face against the blonde's shoulder as she came with a cry. The two of them stood like that for a few moments, neither moving, both panting for breath. Riel was the first to react, pulling her fingers out of Scylla and her hand out of her pants. Scylla slumped back against the door, and the pair locked eyes, sharing a deer-caught-in-headlights look. Scylla's eyes were wide and her pupils blown. She teetered unsteadily on her feet. Riel took 2 steps back, putting some distance between them as reality came crashing back to them. Without a word, Scylla wrenched open the door and fled. Riel let her go. Locking the door behind her, she turned and slumped against the sink. What the hell just happened? She caught sight of herself in the mirror. Her eyeliner smudged, giving her unfocused eyes a smoky look. Her hair was a mess from where Scylla had grabbed it. She reached up to smooth it down and remembered where her right hand had just been. Her fingers were still soaked in Scylla's juices. Riel turned on the hot tap and began washing her hands, rubbing at the skin as it was red raw. What the fuck did she just do? Riel jumped as a knock came at the door. For one hazy moment she yanked it open, expecting to see Scylla standing there looking horrified at her. It was only Tally, though. Her eyes lit up at the sight of her best friend. There you are, she grinned, moving to throw her arms around the smaller girl. I need to pee, but I'll see you downstairs. You haven't danced with me yet, missy. I'm not feeling great, said Riel. I think I drank too much. I'm going to call it a night. What? No, Ray. You can't go to bed. You need to come dance with me. I'm really not feeling it. Riel pulled away. I'll see you in the morning. She ignored the other girl's protests as she stumbled her way out of the bathroom and down the hallway. Abigail's room was unlocked, but a large sign stuck to the door warned people not to go in it. The sign wasn't meant for Rael. She moved inside, closing the door behind her, and began stripping off. Rael fumbled over the buttons of her skinny jeans and almost tripped as she tugged them down over her ankles. She tossed them aside on the floor, followed by her shirt, and crawled into bed Abigail had made up for her earlier. The large bay window seat in Abigail's room doubled as a daybed, and was where Rael always slept when she stayed over. Tally and Abigail would crawl into Abigail's queen-size bed hours later, when the last of the partygoers finally left. Rael lay curled up on her side under the covers, her eyes clenched tightly shut as she fought a wave of nausea that had nothing to do with alcohol. Downstairs, Scylla pushed her way through the throng of people lingering at the bottom of the stairs, making her way towards the door. Her mind raced, and the walls felt like they were closing in on her. She had to get out of here. Syl? Porter found her 10 feet from the front door as she tried to make her escape. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, pressing a kiss to her cheek. His breath stank of stale beer and the same cinnamon whiskey Rael's lip had tasted of. Where have you been? Bathroom, she said, pulling away as she turned to face him. She couldn't look him in the eye, sure that what just happened between her and Rael was written plain as day across her face. Your brother keeps feeding me shots. He's a terrible influence, said Porter, a lopsided smile on his face as he stared at Scylla, his hands on her shoulders. He pulled her in for a crushing hug, the sharp scent of his cologne washing over her. She closed her eyes, trying not to dwell on the taste of cinnamon whiskey. I love you so much, Syl. I love you too, Porter. She briefly hugged him back before making her excuse to leave. I'm going out for some air. I'll come find you guys in a bit. You want me to come with? He asked, looking concerned. Scylla shook her head, forcing a smile she didn't feel. I'll be fine. Okay. He took off to go find Byron, and Scylla turned tail and ran. Outside, as the cool air hit her face, she fumbled with her phone and ordered an Uber. She wanted to put as much distance between her and Rael Collar as possible. Rael woke with a pounding headache. She rolled over, facing away from the light streaming in through the bay window the daybed sat in front of. Not closing the blinds before falling into bed had been a rookie mistake, and she was paying for it. She pulled the blanket up over her head with a low groan. Her mouth was as dry as a desert, and the taste of cinnamon lingered at the back of her throat from the Fireball whiskey. It reminded her of Scylla, which caused another groan to slip from her lips. Shut up, Abigail growled, right before she sent a throw pillow sailing across the room at Rael. It bounced harmlessly off the top of her head before dropping to the floor. Rael crawled out from under the covers, picked it up, and tossed it back at her. Hey, Tally protested as it hit her instead of Abigail. I didn't do anything. Go back to sleep, Abigail whined, feeling just as hungover as Rael did. Tally was usually the one of them that resembled anything close to human the morning after a party, but even she was looking worse for wear as she sat up in Abigail's bed and rubbed at her bleary eyes. What time is it? 2 early, said Abigail, pulling the covers tighter around her as the other girls slipped out of bed. Tally padded out of the room, disappearing for a few minutes before she returned cradling 3 bottles of mineral water from the fridge downstairs. She handed one to Rael before climbing back into bed. Thanks, Tal, Rael mumbled groggily. She cracked open the bottle and took a long chug of the ice-cold water before letting out a contented sigh and flopping her head back against the pillows. Abigail gave up trying to get back to sleep and sat up, taking a sip from the water bottle Tally handed her. God, that's better than sex. You must be having some bad sex, laughed Rael. At least I'm getting some, the other girl scoffed. Rael fell silent, her chest tightening at the thought of what happened last night. What happened to you last night anyway? I mean, I know you're a lightweight, but you didn't even make it to midnight. I drank too much, I went to bed to sleep it off. It wasn't a complete lie. It just wasn't the whole truth either. She didn't dare tell her friends what happened with Scylla. Tally would read too much into it, and Abigail would never let her live it down. Rael told herself it was a stupid, drunken mistake, a one-off that wouldn't happen again. With a little luck, Scylla wouldn't even bring it up. Good morning, sunshine. Anacostia Quartermain greeted her adoptive daughter with a knowing smile as Scylla trudged into the kitchen, where Anacostia Porter and Byron were already gathered around the breakfast table. "Want some pancakes?" Anacostia asked, rising from the table to make some for her. Scylla shook her head, her stomach churning at the sight of Porter, who was halfway through a stack of pancakes drowned in maple syrup when he looked up at her with his boyish grin. "I'll pass," she said, reaching for the cereal box instead. "Suit yourself." Anacostia shrugged and took her seat again, cradling her coffee mug in her hands as she scrutinized the teenage girl skulking around the kitchen. "Is someone hung over this morning?" "I don't know how," Byron scoffed with his mouth full. Anacostia grimaced. "Byron, please swallow." "That's what. Don't even think about finishing that sentence." Byron's adoptive mother glared at him with the kind of look she reserved for when he and Scylla were in trouble. He sheepishly let the sentence die on the tip of his tongue and went back to teasing his twin. "How are you hung over when you left the party so early?" "You came home early?" Anacostia frowned at Scylla. "Yeah, she didn't even say goodbye to me or Porter," said Byron, digging Scylla in deeper. She tightened her grip on her cereal bowl, resisting the urge to throw it at her brother's stupid head. Porter shrunk in his seat, knowing what was coming as Anacostia rounded on her. "Scylla, I let the two of you go to parties and drink alcohol because I trust you both to be sensible. I took an Uber home, and I sent Byron a picture of the license plate. It's not my fault he was too drunk to notice." Scylla defended herself, turning the tables on Byron. Anacostia's deep-set frown smoothed out into a smile. "That's my girl." "I just thought you were pissed because Raelle and I beat you at beer pong," shrugged Byron. Scylla stiffened and paled at the mention of the other girl's name. "I'm going back to bed. I don't feel well." "You don't look good." Anacostia stood and walked over to Scylla, pressing her hand to the teen's forehead. "You don't feel feverish." "It's probably just the alcohol," said Scylla. "I'm going to sleep it off." She made her escape without another look at her brother or Porter. Back in the safety of her room, she crawled under the covers of her bed and tried to ignore the memories of last night that flashed through her mind like a double feature at a drive-in cinema. Scylla picked up her phone, hoping to distract herself, and started scrolling through her Instagram. It didn't help. Pictures from the party flashed up all over her homepage. Tally Craven's latest post caught her eye, and she clicked on it, bringing up a picture of Tally, Abigail, and Raelle, all in what Scylla assumed was Abigail's bed. Tally and Abigail were smiling up at the camera, but Raelle was looking away, a steaming mug of coffee in her hands. Scylla bit down on her lip as her eyes lingered on the slender fingers wrapped around the mug. Fingers which had been buried knuckle-deep inside of Scylla. "Fuck." Scylla groaned and rolled onto her back, her head flopping onto the pillows as she dropped her phone and moved her hand to the waistband of her sleeping shorts. She clenched her eyes shut, imagining the hand belonged to someone else. Please find the fanfiction you just listened to on Archive of Our Own and leave the author some love. Without them, this wouldn't be possible, and we want to thank them from the bottoms of our hearts for creating these amazing stories and keeping the show alive.